Okay, so Tanya today is the 27th of Tishrei. And the Alter Rebbe says, actually, it's interesting, I never kind of picked this thing up before, that the Shechina, first of all, I mean, this is quite well known, that the Shechina refers to Hashem's indwelling, as the Rebbe says in the first Bas Legani Maimer, that Shechina comes from the word Shochin, he dwells in. But one thing that I never picked up before is that the Shechina is actually, it's not only like Hashem, let's say, speaking or coming, like it says, the words of the prophets was like Hashem literally in their voice, but it's actually the very life force itself. It's almost like Mamali Kalamim. It's the very life force itself. So there are many different Shechinas. There's a Shechina of the world of Atzilus, Malchus of Atzilus. This is an example that I once came up with, which, if I may quote myself, I think is good. It's like you have Chachma bin Adas, right? And till Malchus. So this becomes like this is almost like the brain of the world. But Malchus is like the womb. And inside the womb of Malchus becomes, from Malchus, creates the world of Atzilus. So the world of Atzilus, the world, of course, is, as we know from Sefer Yetzirah, a time, space, soul dimension, right? Olam, Shana, Nefesh. So however you cut it, whatever world you're in, there is that notion, because if there is no time, space, whatever that means in that world, and souls, observers, there is nothing, right? So a world is a place that hides Hashem to some extent. The higher you go in the world, the less it hides Hashem. But effectively, there has to be some element of yesh, of otherness. Otherwise, there is no world. It's just Hashem Himself. So Malchus of Atzilus becomes the very soul and the life force of the neshamas of Atzilus. So who are the neshamas of Atzilus? Only the highest of the high, like Michal, you never know. But Avram. But the point is, Malchus, there's a lashon somewhere about like it says somewhere like if there are malachim in Atzilus, then the statement is like, who put a malach in Atzilus? Like, how can malachim get to Atzilus b'chlal? Right? Because Atzilus is the world of Merkava, of total bittul to Hashem, and in this world, so it's a very high, and so very few neshamas are there, like Avram Avinu, and that's why actually the brothers had an issue with Yosef, because Yosef came from the world of Atzilus, and they came from the world of Bria. They didn't really get him. He was on a higher level. So the tzaddikim of the highest realm, it's actually very, very few at that realm, and even malachim, maybe there's some malachim, but very few. It's like it says somewhere that, I don't know, some tzaddik went into Gan Eden, he says, the higher you go, like, you start to be able to count people on your fingers here. As we know, the famous thing, we know the famous thing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that Rabbi Chia wanted to come in. So Rabbi Chia was no slouch, and it says, whoever didn't transform darkness to light is not allowed to go in there. So, in any event, the idea is that the neshama, the Alter Rebbe mentions Adam Rishon. Again, it's the first time I saw this, that Adam Rishon is also neshama of Malchus Atzilus. It's also interesting because we speak about Adam Rishon. Adam Rishon was, we say all the Jewish souls come from him, even though we don't think of him as a Jew. But obviously he was the tzaddik Elyon. He was like from the highest tzaddikim that ever lived. So that's one point. Now, the next point is that so let's say, I don't know where my soul is, let's say Asiya or Yetzirah, whatever it is. So the Malchus of that world, whether it's Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, becomes not only kind of the structure, the echalos, the rooms, the whole thing of that world, but actually is the neshama of that world. So your soul comes from whatever world it comes from, and that's why different people have different predilections, whether it's intellectual, emotional, etc., etc. The Ava is a predilection to complete bittul to Hashem. So your soul is constantly coming into life from that world. Just to conclude with, sometimes you got to use kind of logical assumptions on spiritual matters because it does have its own logic. And that is that the whole idea of a new entity, a yesh, has to come, is a tzimtzum. So even a neshama, even us, where the fact that I can see myself and I can think independently, so Hashem has to be making that as well. So Hashem is making the keli, the body, He's making the universe. He's making also the soul, the observer that's observing it at the same time. So, and so that's basically the story that you have the Shechina, and the Shechina is the Malchus of the world. L'chaim v'levracha.